Hi guys, it's Tony Robbins. You're listening to Habits and Hustle. Crush it.
Today on Habits and Hustle, we have Sarah Jake Roberts. She's a businesswoman, a best-selling author, and a media personality who expertly balances career, ministry, and family. She is the daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes and Mrs. Sarita Jakes and pastures a dynamic community of artists and professionals in Los Angeles and in Denver to sold-out crowds every single time. There is a reason why her videos go viral. She is very inspirational and really speaks to the core of people's problems and issues to get through. Her newest book, Woman Evolve, is, like I said, already a #1 bestseller. It is about life lessons she's learned and new insights from the story of Eve. It's about breaking up with your fears and revolutionizing your life. Please listen to this podcast by me with Sarah, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did with this really exceptional woman. For everyone, the book is called Women Evolve, and I will tell you, you have a lot of really great little nuggets of golden nuggets of information that I think that even if you're not somebody who is really faith-based, let's say, or religious, there's something that people can kind of really grab onto and apply to their life. I really have like a ton of like little pieces that I like wrote notes about.
Oh, I love that.
No, it's true. And I like, let's just dive right in if you're good with that. So
absolutely.
I guess, first of all, let's just talk about you for a moment, because I know that your father's a bishop, and you kind of grew up with this. Your parents are very well known in the community. How did you start? I guess, how did you kind of create your own voice and establish your own audience? What was that process? Because you're still really young. Like, how old are you? You're 30 years
32.
old?
Yeah, 32. I'm 32. So yeah, my parents are leaders in the faith community. And I think because of seeing them in leadership, I was actually pretty determined to not be in the realm of faith. I felt like, business and just really advancing through the corporate ladder would be more my path, majorly because I'd broken like all of these faith rules. I got pregnant at 13. I'd gone through divorce. I waitressed at a strip club. So like your girl was not thinking about faith at all. I was like, God, me and you, we got our private thing going on somewhere. But, I want to kind of show up in the world as someone who doesn't have to be connected to their past mistakes. And I think that whenever you're doing something in the space of faith, that authenticity is what really makes it powerful. What's from the heart reaches the heart. And so when it became evident that I was going to be sharing my story in hopes that it would encourage other people to not be limited by their past and what they had gone through, I think the authenticity of me just sharing my story in my own way created my own lane. I can't say that I actually set out with this idea of I want to be different from them. I just wanted to be me. And in the process of being me, it did cultivate an audience that they had not yet extended into. And because of that, we've been able to merge and reach even more people.
No, it's amazing. And I think what you just said is exactly it. I think that because you're relatable, you're not somebody who lived the path that people would expect for someone who came from kind of your father, your mother, that it kind of opened up the market, so to speak, for people who also have a past, who also have made decisions that they, weren't necessarily thinking that they would when they were younger, right? Because like you said, so you have what, like 6 kids?
Yes. So my husband and I were a blended family, so they haven't all lived in me. But he had 3, I had 2, and we have 1 together. But they all live at home. They're all under our, leadership, if you will. So all 6 of them are with us.
Wow. So then so how did where did Women Evolve come from? How did that kind of like transpire? Your book is called that. Your platform is all about that. What does that mean? Can you just talk about that a bit?
Sure. So when I started sharing my story, just about having my kid and just still wanting to believe that there was more to life than me constantly living in the shame of having a baby as a teenager, because that was just the filter in which I saw my identity. And I just wanted to strip away at this filter. And the more that I did that, people were inviting me to speak and people were being touched and they were coming out of their shells. And that was all great for them. But whenever you begin to excel, people like to define you. They want you to do what they think you should do with your voice. And, people are like, you should write a book, you should have a conference, you should do this. But I just didn't feel passionate about anything until I started really studying the life of Eve. I was at this conference and I was speaking and they were talking about different women of faith in the Bible. And I just noticed to myself, I'm like, nobody wants to talk about Eve because Eve was raggedy, right? Like, who is time to talk about the girl who messed it up for us all? And yet in that moment, I felt like, how can you be recovering from the way that you've seen yourself, the way that you think other people have seen you, and not have compassion for this woman who kind of set the tone for how women have been viewed throughout society and culture. And in the process of like looking at her life from a different angle, of course, I went back to Genesis to just really understand what it was like to be her. And I saw that though she ate from the fruit, though there was this incredible fall from that standpoint, I also saw that she tried to recover. And in the process of doing that, I wondered what would happen to any woman if they dared to look beyond what happened to them, whether they did it or it happened to them, and decide, I wonder if I can evolve from this. And so Eve became like my hero because I saw her recover from what society and what the times really could have left her confined in. And so evolve is just like my ode to Eve, but to every woman, that we all have the ability to evolve.
No, I think that's amazing. And I'm going to read something. So the whole story of Eve, I was not expecting when I got your book. That, like I said, it wasn't at all what I was expecting it to be. And you made some great analogies and correlations, like how you said in the area in your life, you continue to repeat a cycle that ends you feeling less valuable. That is your forbidden fruit. Like that is so true, right? Like, I think that's so smart. And so can you talk about that a little bit more in terms of, about that whole analogy, because I think for people who, people know who Adam and Eve is, of course, but just about how that forbidden fruit is kind of like someone's like secret or shame kind of thing.
Absolutely. All of this happens because Eve eats from this forbidden fruit. And I think from our high horse, it's so easy. I said it, Eve, girl, you had one job. Like, we didn't ask you to pay bills. We didn't ask you to be vegan. Like, you had it all set up and you failed at this one job. And, the reality is that so many of us know better, but don't do better. We don't feel like we have the strength or the faith or the tenacity to actually do better. And that shows up in areas like not making the right choices with our diet, or continuing in a toxic relationship, or spending beyond what we should, or eating French fries in the car when you're supposed to be on a diet.
I love that, by the way.
Oh, it's my favorite thing to do. And it's such Eve behavior, because I'm like, you shouldn't be doing this. And yet life has brought me here. This is what I've got to offer. But, I felt like if I could get us to have compassion for Eve, then maybe I could get us to open up and examine our own lives. Because so many of us, we complain about not being fulfilled, about wondering what our purpose is and how we can make a difference in our world, or how we can change our world, not recognizing that changing those cycles, those toxic cycles that make us have less belief in ourselves, that make us feel more insecure, that really keep us from reaching our goals when it is within our power to do. We have a responsibility, not just to the world, but to ourselves, to become the kind of person who has the discipline to take action when she knows she needs to make a difference. And I felt like if I could help us to see that through Eve, that maybe I could challenge us to do it in our own way.
No, I think it's absolutely true. And like I said, you make a lot of great points. You even talk about the indecisive versus the wrong decision. And we choose to usually stay being in this purgatory of indecisiveness versus we'd rather be there than instead of perhaps making that wrong decision. And I think it's so true, because everyone can relate to that, right? Like when we know better, but we only think we know better, and we don't make action.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I love that because, indecisive is our excuse for not moving. Like, well, I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know. And we stay there for years and years and years. And I get this all the time as a business owner. This indecisiveness, whether I should hire someone, whether or not we should invest in this idea, it comes up over and over and over again. And then there comes this point where you realize that there's going to be risk either way. And so I have to make a calculated risk. I have to make an informed risk, but I have to make a decision. Like, as a leader, as someone who is navigating this movement, my inability to make a decision means that I am keeping the people connected to me stagnant as well. And our vision can only progress to the point in which we're willing to make a decision. And so to release ourselves from the fear of failure means to say that even if this decision doesn't turn into immediate success, maybe it's years down the road, what I know for sure is that I'm going to bring the right heart posture and mentality that allows me to learn regardless of the immediate outcome. And I think when we remove the barrier of failure, and I'm going to be defined by this forever, then we're more open to taking risk that will help us not just be successful on the outside, but to become a better, more informed, well-rounded leader for whatever other decisions we have to make in the future.
No, I agree. But people get very stuck in the fear, right? Like, they're so fearful of doing something. It's like the analysis paralysis thing, right? Like, you do nothing because you're scared. Like, how do you, like, when you do your sermon, is it called the sermon, really, when you do your speaking engagement? What's the other word for
speech? Giving a message. We love messages,
messages, because you were doing these like sold out like speeches all over the country. It's so interesting. Like, you just don't know what you don't know, right? Like, I didn't know about you until I knew about you. And now that I do, it's like, wow, I would, like I said to you earlier, like, you do say some very poignant, really great things, like to what we're just talking about now. And I agree with a lot of it. And so when we talk about fear and people getting stuck, what do you tell the people who follow you? Like, how do they move through fear? What is some steps that they can do? Because a lot of it is about their self-esteem, self-worth, their past trauma. Is there some type of tactical thing that you tell people that they can do to kind of rise above it and go through it?
And this is 9 times out of 10. So in many ways, this is a generalization, but most of the things that we are afraid of is just a boogeyman until we decide to really confront it, right? Like, when we were kids and we're afraid of the boogeyman, you turn the lights on and you see there's actually nothing there. But to really boil this down to, like, what are we afraid of? I am afraid of it not working, because what would that mean if it didn't work? What would that say to you about yourself? What would that communicate to you? That you're human, that you're flawed, that you needed more wisdom, that you needed more experience. Because I have found that when we really confront that fear and we say to ourselves, regardless of where this lands, am I still going to be able to love myself? Will I still be able to believe in myself? And if not, why is my self-worth, why is my ability to receive myself connected to outcomes? Why can't this be a standalone place in which I dwell spiritually and emotionally? And then everything I do is an extension of that. And so I think separating what we do from who we are is so key in navigating fear, especially when it comes to taking chances. And I think once we've been able to healthily dissect those things, then we realize, okay, so I'm going to be human. I'm going to have some bumps and bruises. No one I admire made it through life without having experienced some level of failure. And I say this all the time to my community, is that failure are the bricks that pave the road to success. And it is through our failures that we have an opportunity to learn how to do better, how to plan better, how to execute better. And eventually we create this cycle of growth, not because we were always successful, but because we confronted our fears.
No, it's absolutely true. And then also the whole idea between thoughts and actions, right? Like, the thoughts are kind of like the seeds. Your actions are, what is it? The fruits of the labor, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's you're absolutely, your point was I like the way you said that. And because we become so stuck in those thoughts, and it becomes like a very vicious cycle of bad thoughts, environment. And you talk this in your book is so important, right? Like, having an environment that you're thriving in. Let's talk about that. If someone is in a bad environment, how do they move to another environment? What's the importance of environment, I guess, in this whole process?
Environment is everything. I mean, studies show that the environments
Mm-hmm.
that children are raised in are directly connected to their ability to be successful in school, to be successful adults. And it all starts with this environment. So I live in Los Angeles, right, where it's mostly sunny most of the time. And because of that, I know what can be planted in my yard because of the environment. And so when we think in terms of environment as it relates to our actions and our thoughts, we have to determine, like, what is the environment that I live in? Do I constantly live in an environment of fear? Do I constantly live in an environment of anxiety? We have to be real about that, because those are the thoughts where the thoughts of being prosperous, the thoughts of starting a business have to survive living in that environment. And so when we realize, okay, this probably isn't the healthiest environment for me to be open to love again, if I'm just like all men or nothing, okay, that environment is not going to bring Prince Charming into our lives. And so shifting that environment is an undoing. It is a peeling back of the layers. It's getting into therapy. It's changing how we communicate, because we're trying to shift this season of our life into an environment that is conducive to what it is we're trying to build. So just like practically, it can be like the podcast that we listen to bring another voice, someone who is exactly at the place where you want to be. Bring another voice into your environment to cut through the noise of your fear and anxiety, to begin to listen to music that is a reflection of the heart posture that you want to have, to find messages that speak to where you want to be, because it's going to take an undoing to get there, but it is possible. And then I'll just say briefly, another thing that I've had to do when I'm, creating an environment that will never breed confidence in my body or in my thoughts and ideas, is that the moment that I have a thought that is counter where I know I should be headed, I capture that thought immediately. So like, oh girl, look at that muffin top you're giving today. I capture that thought and I bring gratitude to my body. But I think it is being really intentional about grabbing that thought, recognizing it as anti you, and then determining, well, what is a thought that is pro me and how do I replace that thought? And it takes practice. It's like building a muscle, but once you do it, it becomes more natural and organic.
No, I agree. I think everything's about practice. You can learn, I mean, every skill, doesn't matter if you're going to the gym to get stronger, anything mental, physical, everything requires you to do it over and over again for it to be part of your the new you, the new DNA that you kind of are, or the neuroplasticity that you're creating in your brain. And you do talk about that, like, and again, like this resonated with me as well, like the difference between knowing something and thinking something.
Yeah.
We get so stuck in that. And the knowing and the doing, if you really know something, that's how you kind of do. And that's what breeds confidence.
Yeah.
And, and people cannot, and I think depending on the person and their environment, it makes a really big difference on what that is. And you say something really funny. You actually were like, I have all these people that they're the I don't knowers. They say all these things, they say all these things, and then they're like, I don't know. Because we all do, like it's true though, right?
As we pour our heart out on paper, like, I'm so upset, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know, girl. You do know you're stressed. You're overwhelmed. Like, but that practice of like saying I don't know after everything makes us believe that we can't trust the things that we do know. Like, there are plenty of things that we don't know. Do not put me in an exam room. I will never be able to perform surgery. Like, there are so many things I don't know. So I don't want to rob myself of what I do know, even if what I know changes with experience. And as I'm more exposed in this season, this is what I know. And I need to be able to act off of what I know.
Absolutely. But it's so, and that's how I really resonated, because it's like, I do that all the time. Like, we know if we're in a bad relationship, we know if we're eating badly, we know about all these things. And yet then we get stuck. And I guess I keep on coming back to this idea of being the stuckness, like, to move from the I think to the I know. What is that? What's that little area in between that people can get to?
Oh,
like if you know that information.
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, I'll tell you this. When you really want to know it, I think that when you think it, you're still open to opinions, right? It's why we start asking different people, like, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? Because we don't
True.
really want to know. But I think when you come to a place where you want to know, like, I really want to know what I should do, that it changes the way we begin to act and move. So it's like, even with the book coming out, I'm like, I really think I should push the book, but I'm kind of shy and introverted. And, you're talking about your thoughts and stuff on paper. And for any creative, that can be a little challenging because it's open to judgment and, criticism. And so I can be really shy with that. But I also really wanted to know that I had given my best to this thing, that I'd really showed up. And so I went from thinking, which was kind of fear-based and unsure, into this space of like really wanting to know who I am in this space, who I can show up as. And so I think you've got to really want to know. And when you really want to know, it's so much easier to do because you wanted this that you're standing in.
Right. You want it that badly
Yeah.
that would happen. I'm shocked that you're shy, to hear that you're shy, because you do these like huge sermons to like thousands. What's the biggest sermon you've ever done, or biggest message that you've ever done?
Maybe like 30,000 people. Yeah.
30,000 people. You're talking to 30,000 people on a stage?
Yeah.
And
It's
you're
crazy.
shy?
I am. But one of the things that I do though is like I make sure that I'm like telling a story, or like I can't just like go into it cold, right? Like I have to warm them up. I have to let them know like I am one of you up here. I am stressed. I am sweating. And when I can get everyone on the same page, it helps me to move forward. But that goes back to thinking versus knowing. Like I would never get up there unless I knew I had something to say that was going to help them. And so when I am nervous and I start like shaking and sweating and getting all weird, I say to myself, but like, what are you going to say in this moment? And I have so much faith in what I have to say and how it can touch people that I step into the knowing. And my confidence is connected to the knowing, and the flow and the communication is connected to the knowing. So I have to step into that. But it's stress. It's stress.
I can only imagine. That's a big audience. I was thinking like 3,000 people. I wasn't expecting you to say 30,000.
Yeah.
Are
It's
you
crazy.
kidding?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about that. Like, when was you were young when you act, like really young when you started. What was the first time that you actually did that to such a big audience? How old were you?
Um, okay, so 24. 24 was my first time speaking in front of 18,000 people. And that was when um, that was when I really went from thinking to knowing, because that was the moment, obviously we talked about my father and mother have being these figures within the faith community. My dad was on the cover of Time magazine. And yet when I got pregnant, it wasn't like Twitter and Instagram where someone was going to like pick up and blog about the story. It was still very much so private. And so as the internet became more prevalent, people didn't know that I had a kid at an early age. And so when I was 24, that's when I went from like thinking I could still have a life after this, thinking that I would be okay, to knowing that I wasn't going to be defined. And so one of the things that I did is I got up on that platform that my dad was having, and I was supposed to introduce him. And I wanted to talk about the effectiveness of being raised in his household. And that's when I shared with the room that I got pregnant at 13. I had my child at 14. And yet watching and gleaning from what my father had spoken to so many people was what was pivotal, and me finally taking a chance on my own faith. And that was the moment that everything really shifted for me.
Wow. And so that was the pivotal moment when you went up there thinking that you're just introducing your dad. And then
Yeah.
did you know that you were going to tell your story at that moment, or you had no idea?
I kind of I wondered in my mind, I wonder what would happen if I just stopped living underneath this cloud and just like rip the Band-Aid off up there. Because like there comes this moment, like, and I'm praying that every person has this moment where they just get sick and tired of feeling like I'm never going to be more than what happened to me. And I was just at that point, I was in this very toxic relationship. I was just so tired of feeling like, is this all that there is to life? Because I think that there could be more. And I had it in my back pocket, just wondering what would happen if I just stopped living under that cloud. And I knew the moment that I stepped up there that I was just going to say it. And I was going to see what happened. And I'll just tell you real fast. I mean, there were like 60, 70-year-old women in that crowd who said, when you got up there, it freed me too. I had my baby at 13. And to think that someone had spent 60 or 50 years of their lives feeling ashamed of something that happened when they were 13 helped me to see that the power of women coming together to tell their stories isn't just about it freeing themselves. It's about who else will be given permission in that moment.
I totally agree with that. And did you know at that moment, once you did that's the speech or the talk, that you had like a gift? Because, it obviously not everyone can go up on a stage and have the power and ability to resonate and touch a lot of people, right? Like, you just so happen to be very good at it, obviously. And was that the first time you knew that was a gift of yours?
I didn't think it was a gift then. It took me a long time to see it as a gift. I love writing. Writing is just like my heart on paper. It's my favorite thing to do. And I didn't think that that was a gift just because like everyone can write. I didn't realize writing in a way that you could impact people was really special. But the speaking, because I get so nervous, like I hold a handheld mic because my hand shakes. I just didn't think that something that made me so afraid could be a gift. But it has become increasingly evident by the impact of me sharing that it is a gift. And so I am accepting the gift in the unexpected. In the unexpected, there are gifts.
Wow. And you do write all of your talks by yourself? You get help, or you're just by yourself writing all this stuff?
Nope. It's all by myself.
Because you take like I listened to, what was it called? Girl Get Up. That was I like that. Girl. I like Girl Get Up because you talk about the no's. You're like, no is you celebrate no's. You don't grieve no's. And I was like, yes, I totally agree with that. Because you write from a scripture, like you have like what's it called, a Genesis or a scripture, and then you expand on it into your own thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think of all of those things and all of those analogies and what's the process?
Okay, so most of the time I think about an area where I need to be like touched, an area where like if I'm on the outside looking in at my life, like, because sometimes you got to ask yourself, like, what advice would you give yourself? We are so good at giving advice to other people, but it's like, what would you say to yourself about this area of your life? And I leave nothing off limits, from, maybe concerns I'm having about my children to trying to figure out how to stop breaking or to break a cycle of maybe having low self-esteem or whatever, to increase integrity, whatever it is. And I think to myself, like, what is it that you would want to hear? And then I go back in scripture and I look at like instances where people had a similar issue or a similar concern. And I dissect like, what was God's response? How did God help them navigate this situation? And in the process of doing that, I see all of these different angles that I think apply to people today. And I try to share it in a way that doesn't feel like you're getting beat over the head with the Bible, but rather that there's wisdom that applies to scripture that can apply to our everyday life. And so my goal is to always make the hard digestible in a way that makes people feel empowered to change their lives and to take ownership of their space in the world.
No, absolutely. How long does it take for you to do one of those speeches?
It depends. But a couple days. If I have the space to do it in like 2 to 3 days, I feel really, really good about the content because it's like ingrained in my mind. I don't like speaking on short notice because, I get nervous and then I just get up there and it's mouth vomit, but,
Totally. Yes.
But I like to prepare.
Wow. So it takes a couple of days. I mean, God bless you, because I swear I've done, I did this TED talk and I had months to prepare. And I was so nervous. It was only like 18, 17 minutes. And it felt like it was like 5 hours. I can't imagine. It's like basically you're doing like a TED talk every single time, every day you're preparing this.
For sure. And, that's why you kind of have to be confident about what you're saying. And, I'm grateful that I
Um,
get to connect with so many people because I get to glean from different life experiences, and it gives me a good pulse on where different people are in their life. And what I find most of all, like whether you are a mom with 6 children like I am, or you're a single woman creating her own business, the core of what we're
mhm.
facing, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the hope, the faith, the belief, are all kind of the same. They're just applied to different circumstances. And so I love that the people in Woman Evolve, the community that we've created, they get to inspire the messages that I share with people.
No, you're totally right. I feel like everyone's at the end of the day, we're all the same. We all have the same thoughts and fears, and it doesn't matter where we grew up and what our background or environment is, because women are women and we all have insecurities. We all have some shame on something. I think it's so disingenuous when people pretend that they have nothing. There's nothing
Yeah,
that they're perfect. I think that's completely like nonsense and garbage, because if you've lived a life, there has to be something there that has happened, or else you haven't lived, you know?
for
And
sure.
so when you're in your audiences now, is it all women? Do you get any men, or is it just all women?
So Woman Evolve is generally all women. We have guys that sneak in just because, like, who doesn't love a little time with
Yeah.
the girls?
I was gonna say it's a great thing for a guy to go pick up a girl for a date or whatever, you know?
For sure, for sure. But then when our Sunday services, or I speak at my father's church, you're speaking to a diverse audience. And so that's actually a great mental exercise for me, because some of the analogies and things that relate with a room just of women is totally different when speaking to men as well. And so being nimble enough in my thought and my experiences to make sure that I'm casting a large net has been actually one of the things that I enjoy the most. So sometimes, I listen to the way the men in my family communicate to understand what's effective for them and what resonates with them. But even like listening to different podcasts from different leaders help me to understand, like, what is it that is difficult for a man? Not that they don't have difficulties, but sometimes when you're
Yeah.
momming and building businesses and cooking dinner, and then they come home after just working and they're tired, it's like, what is life like for you over there? Because we're struggling over here.
Absolutely. And we have different ways of thinking and processing information, right? Like it
Yeah.
just is what it is. So when you talk to an audience that have men, what do you talk about?
Oh goodness. Their fears, being married to my husband, I think what I have known even from him and my brothers, is like this idea of not being completely fulfilled in their lives and identity. Power, I think, is something that's really intriguing for men. And I think especially as we see women rise in power, that there could be an opportunity for them to feel like they don't know where they fit in the world. And I think to really go with that, to understand that the rise of the woman doesn't mean the decline of the man, and to help us to understand that we are better together, that, your stability emotionally is just as important as the stability that you add financially. And so to really bring value and hopefully honor to the role of manhood as we continue to see women literally revolutionize different industries, I think it's important that we don't leave our counterparts, and I don't necessarily even mean romantic counterparts, but counterparts in business, counterparts in our creativity behind as well.
I think that I think that is so true. Men are very much about like what their role is, even being successful, where they are
Yeah.
in that on that thing. But you just said it perfectly. Can we talk a little bit about the uncomfortable vulnerability? Because I think that's a good
Yeah.
segue into that. Because being vulnerable, you talk about that in your book, and I like this that you do a lot in the book about working it out. Right? It's really
Yeah.
smart. The book is very conversational. Is that intentional, by the way, to make the book very conversational?
I think so. I didn't want to like talk at people. I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to them. And so I wanted to make them a part of it.
And yeah, you did a good job at that. Because being vulnerable is that's like a key thing, right? Vulnerability. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't like to be vulnerable, men or women, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what is uncomfortable vulnerability? Because you do say it in the book. How would you define that?
Uncomfortable vulnerability is daring to allow all of you to be seen. It's bringing all of yourself to a moment, and living in that place without apology or fear of rejection, because it is so authentic to who you are that it can't really be rejected. vulnerability is something that people often say that I'm really good at. I think I'm good at being transparent, but transparency isn't the same as vulnerability. Vulnerability is where I am now. And in order for me to determine where I am now, I need space to kind of pinpoint who I am and where I am in any given moment. But what I have found, even with the book, I'll tell you that like, there are two ways to do this thing. It's like you convince people over and over again that this book is going to change their life and they need it. And I believe that. I believe that as well. But the uncomfortable vulnerability for me is saying, I need your help because I have a message, but I can't get it out there without your help. And I really believe in it. And I know that it is going to change people's lives, but I'm not sure that I can do this on my own. And I've been talking to my community really from a vulnerable standpoint of like the only way this wins is if people get behind it. And if people don't get behind it, then the tools that have maybe touched your life won't reach someone else's life. And so I literally need you. I can't do this by myself. And, that's not like this boss move talk that I see so many other people doing. And yet it's so true for me because it's from the heart. And I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone. I tell this to them all the time. I'll step out of my comfort zone and I'll post about it and talk about it. And I just ask that when you see it, that you'll like high five it, you'll support it, you'll get behind it and share it when it feels appropriate for you. But needing people is vulnerability. And that's part of the reason why I think it makes it so hard is because we don't want people to leave or to not find value in what we offer.
That's so true. The transparency and vulnerability, there is a very fine line, right? Because a lot of times people can think that they're being vulnerable, but it's not. It's just because because they're blunt or they tell you they say something that's not the same. So then how do you think, because you have that shyness about you, do you not really, what do you think of social media? Like, and having to now go and promote this book when it's obviously like uncomfortable for you, which is endearing, I think.
Yeah, I'm growing. I'm doing it. I have to. Okay, so the thinking versus knowing, right? It's like I have to step into that knowing, and to do it for speaking one time of the week for 45 minutes is a lot easier than living in that knowing every day because it really does require this stretch of faith. And so, as it relates to social media, I am trusting and believing that my heart will be translated in the words. I'm really intentional about the words that I use. I'll tell you what, vulnerability in social media is actually very powerful. Even when someone pops off on you, I don't know if I can say pops off on this podcast.
Yeah, you can. Okay. You can say whatever you want. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Like, so when someone says something negative to you on social media, it's so easy to like give this neck twisting dissertation. Like, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but I am not the one. Right. But that's our defense mechanism showing up. What I have found is to say that comment. Sometimes I'll DM people and I'm like, I deleted your comment because it struck a nerve of something that I'm still working on. And it made me feel X, Y, and Z. And while I know you may have not meant it in this way, this is how I received it. And I would just appreciate you being more sensitive next time when engaging with me on my platform. And you would be surprised how that has neutralized, totally disarmed a person where they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think that you would see it that way. I was just joking, or I stand by what I said, but maybe I could have said it differently. And this idea of seeing a person behind a username, I think it creates vulnerability. And sometimes you have to be the one that tells someone like, I have 1.7 million followers, but I'm a person. Like, I'm not this figure. A lot of times people leave me comments and they're like, she said, or I don't know what she did or her and this. And I'm like, just next time say me or I, like, cause you're talking to me. And I don't know, that vulnerability has changed a lot of the ways that people engage with me on social media. I don't block people as much. I don't mind hosting block parties. I think they're amazing, but I don't have to block people as much when I am vulnerable about how they talk to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true because a lot of people, they think that they're talking to just some wall, right? And then when you actually respond, they're like, oh shit, and then all of a sudden they're like, uh-oh, and all of a sudden they're not so brave. Their courage obviously dwindles, right? Because you're confronting them. People don't like confrontation.
Yeah, but confrontation, it can be very beautiful because there's nothing like them realizing like I'm not a platform, I'm not a stage, I'm a person, and you're talking about my child, or you're talking about something that I said or something that I went through, or my eyebrows, and who's not
Yeah.
sensitive about their eyebrows? Be gentle with me.
Oh, absolutely. People could be very vicious because they don't realize that you are a person. They think that you're just like, again, like just like some kind of like cartoon, not you personally, I'm saying in general,
Yeah,
like a cartoon,
sure.
like they can just like throw whatever because it doesn't matter. But, I think that when you do have that, not like you said, like the confrontation, I think because it humanizes somebody. And then when
Yeah.
you kind of show, by the way, we're both human, it kind of makes everything a little bit less kind of like tense and vicious, I guess would be
And
the
we need
word.
it. We need it. There's so much division these
Oh
days. We
my
really
gosh.
need it. I've got a book club, and in the book club, we've got, white women and black women and brown women and yellow women. And we're all connected over this book that we're reading for the month. And I was looking one day, and there was like a black woman who had Black Lives Matter and a white woman who had Blue Lives Matter. And yet they're still having this moment about needing to be more vulnerable in their relationships. And I thought if we could live first from our core, then maybe we could have more productive conversations about the things that are happening in our world. And so that's one of my greatest hopes as we continue to create community and heal from division, is that we'll live from our core and connect and communicate from that place.
No, I think that's amazing. So then so the last year that we've been kind of not having the ability to go and do things and events, and are you now taking it online and doing these virtual sermons? How are you kind of speaking to your community besides, of course, doing a book and social media?
Yeah. So our things were very event driven because we like to create atmospheres that are like half party, half inspiration. And so with that shifting, I didn't have a lot of faith in virtual just because I feel like there's so much about like the music playing and people getting
Mm-hmm.
dressed up. And I didn't know if we could do that at home. But we have done virtual events, and people who never attended our in-person events have been coming to our virtual events and been like, that is so life-changing. They're saying the same things that people say when they're in person. So there's definitely a way to translate there. So we are doing virtual events, but we're also being more intentional about our social media, more than just a bulletin board. Like if this is the only piece of inspiration someone gets about her journey today, what is it that we want to say? How can we be more content focused than announcement focused? And so it's allowed us to be a lot more creative and disruptive in how we present our platform to people. And we're seeing that really resonate. We've really maximized our email list instead of, once again, just sending out things about what we're doing, but meeting people where they are. Like, here's your weekly inspiration to help you get through the week. So it was a little stressful, right? Because who could have planned for this? I would have loved to plan before we took this pivot, but it also helped me to understand that like maybe I was using an old model. Maybe I did what you're supposed to do when you have this community of people following you. But what if I'm actually more effective by creating these virtual experiences that allow us to reach people internationally while I stay at home and I'm able to still show up for my family?
And was it like, are you having people from all over do you have other people outside the country who come watch you now? And is it mostly
Yeah.
US, Canada?
So we had 50 countries represented at our last virtual event. So some of like my top 5 cities, like when I look at my top 5 cities on analytics with Instagram, it's like New York, Los Angeles, Lagos, Nigeria, London. Like it's not even like just US cities in those top 5 cities. And so, yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of international growth, which is really exciting.
Wow. And then with Women Evolve, so you said you have a book club, but what else is it? It's the sermons? Because what else is on the platform?
So we have an SVOD channel. So people are able to get bite-sized content on the go. We do interviews with thought leaders and people who are making changes in different industries. So Woman Evolve TV, it's an app that you download. We've got Woman Evolve, the podcast, which is like a weekly hot topics and advice podcast. I do a weekly message or a monthly message based on a word of the month in which we kind of set our intention. So for March, the word was courage. this for April. It's invaluable. And so each month we present a word and set our intention in that direction. We do virtual events. We have the book club. We have a clothing store. We're helping women evolve in every area of their life, I hope.
Wow. And you have 6 kids.
Yeah, 6 of them.
Oh, God.
6 of them.
How do you have, do you sleep, or that's kind of like out the window?
It's a little touch and go. Some nights are really good, other nights not so much.
Wow, that's a lot. I like that word of the month. That's really good until that makes the person focus on doing that. That's a really good idea.
I love it. I love it. And the word for January was messy, which was not a sexy word at all. Because, for January, people want like powerful momentum. But January is messy because you're trying to change, but then you're realizing how hard it's going to be to change. And so things get a little messy. So, yeah, we're building, we're headed somewhere. And the people are really looking. This was new. Once again, something that the pandemic kind of birthed. And so every Monday of the month, that first Monday of the month, I present the word. And it was interesting this month in March, I was a little late going on my Instagram live, and someone's like, when are we going to get our word for the month? She's like, my month has not even started until I figure out what my intention is. So
I love that. That is so nice that you're touching so many people like that. And just because you said the word messy, I want to kind of segue into the one more question I have for you is about being overwhelmed, right? Because I think now, especially with the whole with the pandemic, everything, that's something, it's very true. Being overwhelmed, under-resourced because you're home with your kids, or you're kind of like, everyone's now like shifting and maybe changing jobs, or because the whole world has changed, how their careers, what they're doing, where they're working, whatever they're doing, where they're working out. And you talk about this in the book, and I really like this because you give people ways and steps of kind of like when they are overwhelmed. Can we just talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we have to know the difference between self-care and soul care. Self-care are the things that we do that don't necessarily bring rest to our soul. So working out is great self-care, but it doesn't always make you feel meditated on the inside. It doesn't always make you have peace on the inside. Maybe you feel momentum and empowered. Getting your nails done, I would consider self-care, but soul care is taking a moment to ask yourself, how are you? How are you feeling? When was the last time you said your own name? When is the last time you held yourself close? Where are you feeling fragile? Where are you feeling vulnerable? And what led you to this point? Because I feel like when I have been overwhelmed, and when so many people who I get to connect with have been overwhelmed, that it comes down to like one thing got off track and now it feels like everything is off track. And so what steps do we need to make? What responsibilities do we need to put on pause? How do we need to delegate in order to get ourselves back to a place of center? Maybe we bit off more than we could chew. Maybe we need to determine how to separate some things that are happening in our life, but to give yourself permission to check on yourself to see when you got off track, and then determine what do I need to do to feel supported, to show up in the world is so important. Because becoming depressed isn't something that you see coming. There's no warning when you're depressed. There's no warning when you're about to have an anxiety attack. It happens because there is an accumulation. So as much time as we can spend saying, I need to just clean out the closet of my soul, clean out the closet of my mind, I think it's so much better because we're able to dissect when we're in a danger zone and then to prepare accordingly for that.
No, I think that's great. And then when you say under-resourced, you talk about being unconventional or other people's knowledge. Those are all great pieces that I want you just to talk about a little bit. And because I, like I said, these are all, everything I've been asking you are things that really resonated with me and I wanted to share with my audience. So
yes. So especially as a business leader, under-resourced is something that I constantly run into a wall with, feeling like I don't have enough resource in order to do X, Y, and Z. But I think that overwhelming feeling of not having enough keeps me from being creative and innovative to really maximize what I do have. That's why I feel like coming back to that place of center is so important, because there's creativity and innovation connected to that. I talk about in the book, that saying that they attribute to Bill Gates: if you want something done, ask a lazy person to do it because they're going to figure out the most efficient way to get it done.
Or a busy person.
A busy person to do it. Yes.
Don't ask a lazy person.
They're going to figure out the best way to get it done quickly. And so, I think living in that mindset of coming to a place of center and then allowing ourselves to determine, okay, like maybe there's a software program for this, or maybe there's someone else who can do this, or maybe I can delegate to this person. I feel like that creativity is connected to that center, but never allow being under resourced to be the reason why you don't move forward, because there's always a way, there's always a tool, there's always a class that you can take to help you overcome the area where you feel under resourced. And so I felt like that was really important. As a woman of color, so many of the women who I know who want to start businesses feel like, the banks don't loan to us in the same way that they loan to other people, or we don't have the education that a lot of people have. And so how do I get from feeling like I'm coming from behind? And a lot of that comes down to being willing to do this research to figure out what opportunities, what assets are available to me that can help me be equipped in an area where I may have had deficiency.
That's really well said. And like I said, that area really, that resonated because I feel very under-resourced right now. So that's why I'm like, I agree. You have to think out of the box. You got to also talk to people, get knowledge from people that if you don't know something, go find somebody who does know something, right? Or ask questions, because these are all ways you can kind of help yourself without, if you don't know something, don't let that be your stop. Don't let the start be in the stop, or stop being in your start, whatever that is, whatever that saying is.
Whatever it is.
You got what I'm saying. No, but this was great. I like I said, the book, I really enjoyed it. It's called Women Evolve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where do people find you? Where do people find more information about you if they want to get the book? Tell us all your info.
All of my information, my telephone number Woman Evolve is available anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indies. We're making sure that it's at Target. It's going to be at Target, which is really exciting because it's hard to get into Target. So Woman Evolve is going to be everywhere. And then you can find me on all of the socials at Sarah J. Roberts. Thank you. I'm excited about that. And then get connected with the movement at Woman Evolve.
I think it's great. And very well spoken. I really, like I said, you make great analogies where even if you're not somebody who is super religious, you can find something in this book that really can help you, or you can integrate it into your life and improve whatever area. Like I said, you're super, super wise for a very young girl. So congratulations.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you for letting me be on your podcast. I love it.
Habits and hustle, time to get it rolling. Stay up on the grind, don't stop, keep it going. Habits and hustle, from nothing into something. All out, hosted by Jennifer Cohen. Visionaries, tune in, you can get to know them. Be inspired, this is your moment. Excuses, we ain't having that. The Habits and Hustle podcast, powered by Habit Nest.